days of Elijah, declaring the word of the Lord.
Welcome to Love's Last Call with Evangelist Carol Ann of Agape Light Ministries. Please open your hearts to hear an anointed message that will encourage and empower you to walk in the love and light of God's Word.
Beloved, we have reached part 7 of our current series, The Unseen Realm, Understanding Lucifer's Agenda. And as of this writing, the war in Israel continues to rage with prophetic realities of the highest order. And as these precursors push us ever closer to the last things on God's prophetic calendar, it is important that we remain in prayer for Israel and the entire Middle East, because there is a tendency to be very aware when these critical events first happen. But then, as time goes by, we can become distracted by other matters and lose the urgency of what this war really entails. As the prophetic word of truth unfolds with dramatic confirmation that all that the Lord God Almighty has promised will take place is unfolding before us and bringing us to the end of this age and the return of Jesus, making the rapture of his true church even more imminent. At the same time, we must not lose sight of the fact that while the war in Israel continues, there are other prophetic indicators that are also at work, many of them taking place behind the unseen realm. And we must remain aware of these precursors as well, because together they are all converging into the living reality of the last day scenario that God's unadulterated word of truth has made certain, will and is even now coming to pass in our very generation. And we will continue to address these prophetic indicators as we proceed in the study, with special emphasis on the one world religion that is being formed into a living organism of deadly deceit and Luciferian New Age deceptions. I'll be sharing some shocking information regarding Pope Francis and his interfaith endeavors toward the end of this series, and may even mark it as its own separate message, because to me it holds the most import, as it involves the spiritual aspect of everything else that is unfolding in Lucifer's agenda to rule over the people of earth, through his Antichrist and the global control that he will wield. For being held in the balance is the eternal destiny of every man and woman on earth. But for now, I'll pick up with the agents of darkness who are serving Lucifer, particularly in his global governmental agenda. In our last segment, we covered the Bilderbergers, and today we will be investigating the Trilateral Commission. I will note here, beloved, that these are not conspiracy theories. They are facts that can be investigated and found to support the reality of the global intent that is held by these agents of darkness toward a one-world government. Also, as I share this information with you, please remember what 1 John 5:19 has made certain to us, and that is that the whole world is under the power of the evil one. And again, I'll be gleaning from the commentary entitled The New World Order by the Jeremiah Project, where they write, the Trilateral Commission sprang from the Bilderbergers when one of its principal members, Esso or Standard Oil's David Rockefeller, came into conflict with his fellows over whether to include Japan in the club. Upon reading the 1970 book, Between Two Ages, Rockefeller lured its writer, Professor Zbigniew Brzezinski, away from the Columbia University to become the chairman and co-founder of the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Brzezinski, who later became the mastermind of Jimmy Carter's foreign affairs and national security blunders, was looked to as a policy guru by the liberal media until his death in 2017. Using the same collectiveness mindset, objectives, and premise as the CFR, Rockefeller funded and set up the New York-based Trilateral Commission with Brzezinski as its intellectual architect, and purposely patterned it after Brzezinski's book. along with Brzezinski and a few others, including the Brookings Institution, Council on Foreign Relations, and the Ford Foundation. Rockefeller convened initial meetings and held their first executive committee meeting in Tokyo in October 1973. Members included corporate CEOs, politicians of all major parties, distinguished academia, university presidents, labor union leaders, and not-for-profits involved in overseas philanthropy. The Trilateral Commission was founded to become a type of international CFR, or Council on Foreign Relations. The goal of the Trilateral Commission is to align the free world with the advanced communist states to organize a world government. Members of the Trilateral Commission were instrumental in creating the European Union as well. The EU is the prototype of global governance that will soon exert its influence to reshuffle world relationships. Some people who are or have been members include David Rockefeller, founder of the Commission, chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank Board from 1969 to 1981, chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations from 1970 to 1985, and a life member of the Bilderberg Group until his death on March 20, 2017. Presidents George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, and Bill Clinton, Dick Cheney, William Cohen, Dianne Feinstein, David Gergen, and Henry Kissinger, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan and Paul Volcker, Caspar Weinberger, Secretary of Defense under Reagan, Yotaro Kobayashi, former chairman of the Fuji Xerox Company, John H. Bryan, former CEO of Sara Lee Bakeries, affiliated with the World Economic Forum, and part of the board for Sara Lee, Goldman Sachs, General Motors, British Petroleum, and Bank One. James E. Burke, CEO of Johnson & Johnson, from 1976 to 1989. Hank Greenberg, former chairman and CEO of AIG, American International Group, the world's largest insurance and financial services corporation. It should come as no surprise that when AIG faced huge investment losses that threatened its solvency in 2008, the American government stepped in with billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to keep the company afloat. And continuing with the Trilateral Commission's members, Lee Raymond, ExxonMobil former CEO and chairman, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the American Enterprise Institute, Director of J.P. Morgan Chase and Company, Director and member of the Executive and Policy Committee of the American Petroleum Institute, and many, many others. Many of those mentioned were or are members of the Bilderberg Club as well. According to Patrick Wood, who is the leading expert on technocracy, transhumanism, sustainable development, and geopolitical trends, the chaos in the world today is a direct result of policy set in motion to foster a new international economic order. The NIEO was the explicit creation of the Trilateral Commission, founded by David Rockefeller and Brzezinski in 1973. And their early papers and task force reports clearly asserted their new international economic order plans. And moving closer to the more current activities that involve the Trilateral Commission, on November 23, 2022, some of Asia's best-known politicians, corporate leaders, and academia gathered at a hotel conference room just steps away from the Japanese Prime Minister's office. At each place on the table was a large envelope that contained the detailed biographies of the roughly 50 attendees, and a white folder with the words, "The Trilateral Commission." The meeting in Tokyo, the first since the pandemic started, was a moment of unprecedented glasnost for the secretive organization, which celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2023. Created during the depths of the Cold War to steer the trilateral U.S.-Japan-Europe security partnership, Its deliberations and the influence it supposedly wields has been the subject of much speculation. The invitation-only nature of the gathering, not to mention the high-profile participants, has been one of its attractions over the last half-century, insiders admit. And while there is much more in-depth information that will not take time today to expound on, let it suffice to say that the Trilateral Commission is still going strong and playing its role in the formation of the global empire of the Antichrist, along with the many other players in Lucifer's darkened agenda to rule the world through his final man of lawlessness, the Antichrist. And in our next segment, God willing, we will move on to the Skulls and Bones Society and the United States presidents who have been members of this nefarious and darkened society. Until then, I leave you with Micah 2:1. Woe to those who devise wickedness and work evil on their beds. When the morning dawns, they perform it, because it is in the power of their hands. But in contrasting and victorious conquering power, Daniel 12:3 proclaims to us that those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Keep shining the light of his unadulterated word of truth, beloved, until God's true church is removed from this fallen world, and we are caught up to meet Jesus in the air. Maranatha, and, as always, beloved, I bid you his agape.
You've been listening to Love's Last Call with Evangelist Carol Ann of Agape Light Ministries. If you have a prayer request, please contact us at Agape Light Ministries, P.O. Box 6313, Chesterfield, Missouri 63006, or via our website at www.agapelightministries.com. Again, that's www.agapelightministries.com.